Batman the Killing Joke was released by DC Comics in 1988 and has gone down in history as possibly one of the greatest comics in history, offering readers an answer to one of the most asked questions in comics: what is the origin of the Joker, while still offering an air of mystery in keeping with the essence of the Joker and not giving a definitive answer to this question. Written by Alan Moore, who by the time of the Killing Joke's release had already penned the highly successful graphic novel Watchmen. Alan Moore is known for being completely independent from backstory and preferring to write completely separate stories from previous lore presented to readers, something which is evident in the Killing Joke. Before I discuss the Killing Joke and what makes it so brilliant, I think it's important to understand the history of the Joker and the characterization of him throughout the years. The Joker is known for being an insane, twisted, demented character. However, he was not always presented this way. Pre-1970, the Joker had been known as the Clown Prince, whilst not being so demented and twisted in personality, but more goofy in tone, utilising weapons such as joy buzzers, trick guns and elaborate crimes. This was probably most apparent during the 1960s Batman TV show starring Cesar Romero as the Joker. As the Batman TV show declined in interest, so did the Joker, and he didn't appear in any comics between 1969 to 1973, a fact very hard to believe today, with the Joker regarded as maybe the greatest comic book villain of all time. By the time Alan Moore began writing The Killing Joke, the Joker returned to his earlier roots of being an impulsive, homicidal maniac. The Joker, however, was still used as a secondary villain, and it was until the Red Hood story arc came around in 1987 the Joker truly grew in popularity. So what makes The Killing Joke so brilliant? Up until the release of The Killing Joke, no comic or graphic novel had looked into the origins of the Joker. This was seen as a fairly taboo subject, and many readers and critics agreed it's a subject matter better left untouched and remain ambiguous. Alan Moore agreed that the Joker's origin should remain ambiguous, which is why the Joker serves as the narrator throughout The Killing Joke, the Joker serving as a highly unreliable narrator due to the deterioration of his mental state, quoting his origin as, "Sometimes I remember it one way, sometimes another. If I'm going to have a past, I prefer it to be multiple choice." What Alan Moore truly wanted to look at is that Batman and Joker, whilst on face value, appear to be complete opposites. Batman and the Joker, psychologically, are mirror images of each other, an aspect which had never been before explored in Batman comics, stripping down the character of Batman and actually looking into his own sanity, that he is, in his own way, just as insane as the Joker, and that he and the Joker perceive the world according to different points of view, with the Joker's interpreted through a joke. Through showing human elements in the character's backstory, in having a loving family, struggling with everyday problems we all fight with, and presenting the Joker as a tragic character, Moore was able to make the Joker a three-dimensional character, and was able to break the mould of the one-dimensional lunatic killer that had been presented in comics before. Thanks to The Killing Joke, the characterization of the Joker has been changed forever, having a major influence on Heath Ledger's interpretation of the Joker, who in the film The Dark Knight classically mentions two different origin stories, playing on the Joker's quote in The Killing Joke, he likes to think of his origin as multiple choice. The Killing Joke looks into the idea that it only takes one bad day or moment for a person to lose their sanity, and that within each individual there is a piece of insanity buried within each of us, and it only takes the right moment for that insanity to spring forth. Even though The Killing Joke was intended by Moore and DC Comics to be separate from the DC comic universe, due to the success of the comic, however, it has now been adapted into the DC universe and is now officially canon. This in part has taken away from maybe the greatest aspect of the comic, the ambiguous ending that was open for the reader's interpretation. So how does The Killing Joke end? After Batman and the Joker have their final fight, and the Joker is defeated by Batman, Batman offers to rehabilitate the Joker, who denies, saying it is far too late for him. The Joker then shares a joke with Batman, which Batman laughs at. As we wait for police, we see, however, as the two men laugh, Batman nears the Joker, placing his hands on him before the panels cut to black. A fantastic ending to the story, allowing the characters, for maybe the first time in history of DC Comics, share a normal conversation, and for one moment put their rivalry aside and share a human moment. Batman nearing the Joker to me shows that perhaps Batman had finally lost some of his sanity and has decided that this madness cannot continue, deciding that the only option is to finally kill the Joker after he will not agree to rehab, finally seeing him as a lost cause. The ending to The Killing Joke is open to interpretation, with a number of theories on what happens after the comic finishes, but now that The Killing Joke is in canon, it has been revealed the Joker was simply taken away by police, which I feel takes away from a truly interesting aspect of the comic. But whilst researching for this video, I discovered Alan Moore actually commented on what happened after the end panel, stating, "For the record, my intention at the end of that book was to have the two characters simply experience a brief moment of lucidity in their ongoing very weird and probably fatal relationship with each other, reaching a moment where they both perceive the hell that they are in and can only laugh at their preposterous situation. So I guess I was wrong, but I still like the idea that this ending is open for the reader to interpret and is open for great discussion and theories. Alan Moore is known for not enjoying fandom and join the conversation. Critically, The Killing Joke fared fantastically, winning the Eisner Award for Best Graphic Album, and was called by Robert Greenberger and Matthew K. Manning's the definitive Joker story of all time. Manning additionally called it one of the most powerful and disturbing stories in the history of Gotham City. But despite the overwhelming critical praise and the legacy The Killing Joke has left on DC Comics, Batman and the Joker, one person truly does not care for the comic, and that person is amazingly the writer, Alan Moore, having this to say about the comic. I've never really liked my story in The Killing Joke. I think it put far too much melodramatic weight upon a character that was never designed to carry it. It was too nasty, it was too physically violent. There were some good things about it, but in the terms of my writing, it's not one of my favourite pieces. Going on to state in a later interview, I thought it was far too violent and sexualised a treatment for a simplistic comic book character like Batman, and a regrettable misstep on my part. I have no interest in Batman, and thus any influence I may have had upon current portrayals of the character pretty much lost on me. This critique is very Alan Moore. He is known for being very harsh on his work and usually having fairly little interest in the legacy attached to his work and not interested in his work going mainstream. Whilst I feel Moore's comments are valid and these aspects could be seen as negatives, I feel personally The Killing Joke took some fantastic risks and was a truly creative piece of comic book writing that is worth the legacy attached to it, and has forever changed the characterization of Batman and the Joker and changed the complete landscape of the DC comic universe. In conclusion, The Killing Joke is a truly spectacular comic book read, managing to humanise the sadistic character of the Joker and adding new dimensions to his personality, allowing the reader to see the Joker in a somewhat sympathetic light, helping the audience to have a better understanding of the Joker, but still be able to question whether the story the Joker is telling us is true, and if he is simply trying to manipulate the reader like he does his enemies. The comic also poses two incredibly interesting questions. 1. Is the Batman actually just as insane as the Joker? And 2. What moment could change your entire aspect on life? I would highly recommend this comic to any of my viewers, as for me, it is possibly the greatest comic ever written.